food is such a mental health thing, like this obesity. People just, your emotions, like you're eating, your
Hmm.
hands are hungry,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
yeah. So it just taking it back and like to remember to be gentle with yourself and just have that conversation with your body and then have that conversation with the food in front of you and learning, what's nourishing you and learning
Hmm.
more about your own body and what it really needs and if it needs to take a break. Because I'll say again, fasting does, letting the body, the organs rest
Yep.
for a 12-hour period. There's a really big, like 36-hour period, really does a lot, to help reset the body. But we're in a society now where, there's somewhere you go into the cities and there's a restaurant wherever
Hmm.
you go
Hmm.
and they're shoving this food. Well, how? And I'm like, dude, how nutritious is this food? And like, I mean, all these places are staying open and they're generating all this money, but how, us eating from the time we get up to the time we go to bed, how respectful is that to our bodies?
Thanks for coming back this week for our next episode of 50 Faces of Feeding South Dakota. I hope you caught last week's episode with Lori Dykstra, which really set us up for this month's conversations around food access, food insecurity, and things that are happening within Native communities to change the way in which their families and their tribal nations are being fed. Today, we have Irona Howe joining us with the Cheyenne River Reservation so that we can deepen this conversation and talk more about experiences and actions that are taking place right here in South Dakota. Irona, thanks for joining us. Let's start by having you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a member. Well, my name is Irona Howe, and I'm a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I've lived here for most of my life. I moved here when I was 11 years old, so I was raised in Eugene, Oregon.
Mm.
I graduated here at Cheyenne River, and then from Dupree, South Dakota, Dupree School District, and then I left for a time frame. I used to ride horses for a living. So I rode horses down in Texas. I have a degree in horse training and management. Um, in 2010, I have another degree I have an associate's in the science of nursing from Presentation College. Um, I moved back in 2028. And so I've lived here in Dupree ever since. Um, I have worked in numerous places. I've worked for the treasurer's office here in Ziebach County. I've worked for the Sioux YMCA with the youth there. I've worked for youth diabetes here on Cheyenne River. And I've worked in the grocery store at Lakota Thrifty Mart for about 5 years. And I currently work for the CRST Buffalo Corporation. And my title right now is CRST Farm to School. I've been working for them for the last 2 years. And so my job initially is to implement buffalo meat um, across Lakota country onto the school menus. It's been a lot of fun. The other thing that the CRST Buffalo Corporation has done is they've written the LFPA grant. So I've had the opportunity of doing quite a few food distributions. And me and my coworker, Mary Duchesneau, we're the lead in that. Our team is really small, but we've had the opportunity to go out into our smaller communities and bring the food to them because here on CRST, Eagle Butte really gets a lot of I guess, a lot of stuff, and they get a
Well,
lot of stuff.
you've set it up just so perfectly because just such a diverse background really lends to the discussion that we're having today about the food insecurity and challenges and opportunities within tribal communities and on reservations. There's a couple things I want to go back to, though, before we move forward, out of my own curiosity. Tell me about riding horses for a living. What does that look like?
It was a lot of fun. I worked for the cut and horse industry, and it's really long hours. You wake up about 4 a.m. in the morning and you start saddling 10. And I was a loper, and so being a loper, you take care of the horses that are in your string, and you work for a trainer. Um, and basically, I did everything. You feed the horses,
Hmm.
and a lot of the therapy. I did a lot of therapy on horses. So
You had like the dream job of so many little girls who just love horses and just want to have a horse. So
yes,
that's really cool.
it was a
Um,
lot of work. I mean, like, if
I
you
bet
want to go into the horse world, if there's anybody out there listening, it is you sleep, eat, breathe horses.
it's all
Horses
horses.
first. Yeah, it's horses first. It was a beautiful experience. I learned so much. I was so immature. I was just a res girl back
Mm.
then. I remember like the first big barn that I dropped into. I was so bucky and so resi. I did not speak for like 6 months. And
Wow.
I just got on one after another after another. You wrote about an average of 10 a day, I
Oh my
guess.
gosh.
But it
Wow.
was I loved it. So it was a
So
priority back then. So
you mentioned you moved back and you said 2028, which would be 3 years from now. I'm guessing, did you mean 2008?
yeah, 2020,
Okay,
yeah,
just checking.
2000, yeah, yeah. Sorry
I was
about
like,
that.
wow, we're like time traveling. No, it's okay. So
Teleporting, right?
let's ground our audience a little bit in, Dupree, South Dakota isn't a town that you hear talked about much. And so let's ground a little bit in where is Cheyenne River Reservation located within the state of South Dakota?
It's on the west end of the river, I guess, because South Dakota is always split up. It's on one
Mm-hmm.
side of the
East or
river.
west? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about the middle of the state, I would say.
And
Um,
north, right?
yeah, northern middle of the state. So we're prairie.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a
Yeah.
lot of openness. It's beautiful here. There's a lot of rolling hills. Once you get down in the rivers and the creeks and everything, there's a lot of breaks. We have a little bit of everything within our communities. Like we even have like a little tiny mini Badlands down in Thunder Butte. Um, I've had the opportunity and I love my home. I love Cheyenne River. So I move around, and check out the land quite a bit. I have a lot of love for the land.
Yeah, it
Um,
is beautiful. I've been to Cheyenne River. We have several community partners up in that area, and so I traveled from Pierre, out of Pierre, and I joke, but you're heading into very rural areas when there's a sign that is like, "This is your last stop for gas." Like I mean it, but as I kept going, it just is beautiful, wide open spaces, just incredible landscape to look at. It's almost distracting, but even to the point where I just didn't really have cell phone connection. I was trying to use a map to guide me, and that would stop every now and then because you're really getting into rural South Dakota,
yeah,
really getting into some spaces where there's just nothing but field to be seen for miles.
yeah. The land is still raw here in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
areas. And there's so much abundance in that. And there's a lot of in some areas it's the natural landscape is as it was.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't really been touched.
And that's
And
just a beautiful thing to envision and think about. And a lot of haying happening up in that area,
yeah, there's
was
a
what
lot
I
of
noticed.
yeah, a lot of farm work, a lot of haying, a lot of ranchers. Um, eh, but it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. You enjoy every season that comes. I mean,
Yeah,
I've really embraced the winter, just embrace it.
yeah.
So it
So
brings a lot of good things.
Does the Cheyenne River Reservation extend into North Dakota at all, or does it stop at the South Dakota border?
It stops. So
Okay.
then up above us is Standing Rock, and
Okay.
then
Okay.
Standing Rock goes into North Dakota.
Okay.
So
So tell us a little bit about the reservation itself. What is culture like? What is community like there within Cheyenne River?
it's with my feet on the ground and working within the communities, we have so many organizations and so many beautiful things happening on a ground level. I've gotten the opportunity and been blessed with working with all of these organizations, the Culture Center, Missouri Breaks, K Account Foundation, the schools. I get the privilege of working with all of the schools. Title I program, youth diabetes, um, environmental health programs, mental health programs. And there really is a sense of all of these programs, they will come together. We come together and we have meetings and we discuss about what's the next event we can put on for the people,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to, like serve our youth, because we're here for our youth. And there is, with all of these organizations, you can see the Wolokota spirit inside of everything because as Lakotas, you don't do things alone. You always need
Mm-hmm.
unity and you always need unity. Um, I really want to mention the CRST horsemanship program. And they do a beautiful job too. There's so many um, other organizations that you'll see them. We're just all coming together, and what's the most healthy thing for us as humans, and
Mm-hmm.
what's going to help us move forward, and what can we do for our youth to give them the opportunity to thrive and to move forward with a good heart and be on a good road, you know. Going back to we've got to get back to food sovereignty. So
Mm-hmm.
or
And
stop.
we're gonna talk about that in a little bit too. But I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody had mentioned once that the Cheyenne River Reservation is about the size of the state of Delaware. Does that sound kind of equivalent, perhaps?
Yeah, I've got it written down here. So we have 1,458 all right, 1,450,644 acres here.
Wow. Wow. So that's really big. But then what's the population?
The population here on Cheyenne River is anywhere, well, there's approximately 8,000 enrolled, tribally enrolled members. But when you
Okay.
go to nine non-tribal members, there's probably about 14,000 people that live here.
Okay.
And then
So what are some of the bigger like communities that we'd see on a map that are within the reservation area?
it would be Eagle Butte would be your biggest
Mm-hmm.
community that you have
Okay.
here on CRST. And when we do food distributions, I usually estimate about 3,000 people, but really realistically, I believe you're hitting about, if everybody was to come, you'd be hitting well over 5,000.
Mm. So you food distributions you've talked about a couple times, you've mentioned a couple times, and I know that we have partners. So we have a mobile distribution in Eagle Butte.
Yes.
We have some partners that operate like shelters or youth centers, the schools and things like that that are doing different food programming. Why is I mean that's a really big resource in that area. Talk a little bit about the challenges of or what the food access opportunities are right now within the Cheyenne River Reservation.
I'll go to our smaller communities
Yeah.
and for our West End, the smallest community is probably Bridger.
Okay.
And then there's other communities on the West End too. So there's Red Scaffold, Cherry Creek, Zucchini, and then Basically, the furthest out one on the west end is Bridger. Um, Being able to load up, because we usually have a carpool, and load up with food and then physically bring that food into the communities, um, has been a really big eye opener. Being able to be in the communities and kind of see for that moment how the community is a community, and it really what they need, and like, and the gratitude of being able to come out to those smaller communities. It's like, like Bridger will say, they always forget about us, and then we usually just take care of ourselves out here in Bridger. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Bridger is one of the most beautiful places on this planet, and it is gorgeous. And time is timeless there. Every time I step in there, it's like, whoa, it's like time just stands still. On the east end of the reservation, the furthest out community would probably be Blackfoot. And then you've got Swiftbird. It's a little bit more spread out there. And then you got LaPlante and Green Grass, On the Tree, White Horse. And those are your smaller, but communities. But we'll go back to Blackfoot. I mean, it's a really, really small community. And if they get, they'll even tell you too, like, geez, nobody comes out here, and it's been, it's at the food distributions, the Buffalo Corporation, we make sure we greet everybody with a good heart, and we're happy to see you. And people are welcome to pick up for anybody who can't make it. You'll see the community start coming together. Well, so and so lives over here, and they have 5 kids in their household and this many other people in their household. So uh, they're coming together and they're taking care of each other. Um, and I think personally, in my opinion, we just have to remind people to take care of each other, because we live in a society where, it's all about me, me, me. And you take care of yourself and that's it. But when you start taking care of other people and start taking care of your community and looking after each other, it you get more of a unity sense, and then you're tapping into the Wolokota spirit, which is ultimately just love, and that's what we need right now.
And it's really about helping that community thrive regardless of the size that it is, because there are not grocery stores in those small communities, or even likely gas stations or convenience stores that have food access. And so um, that's a challenge. And then on top of that, transportation is a challenge.
Yep.
I remember talking with one of our partners in Eagle Butte who said that they deliver food boxes out to some families that live along the river, families with kids but no transportation. And so if they weren't getting those deliveries from that partner, they're very limited in what they have for available food. And
Yep.
that's, again, to your point, culturally, the importance of just using that opportunity to love on people and bringing that food out of love and not out of any other reason than knowing that they need it. And the right thing to do is to take care of your community.
Yeah, take care of each other, and everything will take care of, and the rest will follow. Yeah.
So there's a lot of, you've talked so beautifully about, like I know I've been there, but I haven't been to all of Cheyenne, but to Cheyenne River. But as you are describing these communities, I can just envision them. And you said, like it's timeless and time stands still, and culture is a very important thing with Native communities. And you think about before the colonization of America, these tribes were thriving. They were, across the U.S. And one of the things that I've learned through, just some conversation and a cultural learning series that we've delivered is truly the disruption of the food byways for Native communities as colonization began to happen. And so as America became more populated, and tribal nations were moved, historically, hunting and gathering is the way in which food was accessed. Um, During colonization, there weren't grocery stores, but, you know, Native individuals were able to provide for themselves, their families, their communities through that means. They were nomadic. They would move. They would trade with each other, and then there was further and further colonization and moving them from this large landmass into these small reservation areas. And that really, for me, was eye opening to learn about, you know, they, we, put individuals who needed that space onto this land that wasn't even really farmable, wasn't even really, didn't have the things that meet their spiritual needs, their cultural needs, and started the issue of, now we need food. Now we have a food insecurity issue. Before that was even a terminology. And then the government tried to say, well, here we can help. Here's some commodity foods. We're gonna give you food items, but they weren't the right food items. They weren't things that were healthy. And you've mentioned, diabetes, because there's a physical health concern within Native communities because, and this again was eye opening for me. The foods that were provided were not able to be processed appropriately by, by your bodies. And so then that leads to diabetes or hypertension, which becomes a chronic issue generation after generation when the types of food continue to be diminished that are being received. And I say that, like, I ground us in that because it's an important piece to understand about the current food access and food insecurity issues within reservation.
As a whole, it's a food pandemic as a whole, I believe, that we're living in right now,
Mm.
across Turtle Island. These toxic foods, they're not even foods, and the pharmaceutical companies own the food systems that's within our grocery stores. And it's easy to grab a bag of chips, but it has no nutritional value whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start thinking about the nervous system and you start thinking about the brain and what it's really doing, and then what it does to our guts. And a lot of I mean, how many people have gut issues? I
Right.
bet you 90% of America has gut issues, and the ones that don't are the ones that are eating organic, or they're eating those fermented foods, or they're harvesting their own foods and taking action in that. Um, yeah, it's wild to think about so the government put us on these reservations, and then they're like, here's flour, and one of the staples is fry bread. And I personally stay away from fry bread. I'm personally on a all buffalo diet. That's the only protein meat that I will eat, just because I work for the Buffalo Corporation. I dry my meat, and one of the other things is, I believe that we will start going back to too, and we're already doing classes, is going out on the land and
Mm.
harvesting, biscuit root,
Yep.
harvesting cherries, harvesting, you know, Timpsila, our turnips, our wild onions. Those foods are from the earth, and the earth will give us everything that we need to nourish our bodies. We all have access to it. Dandelions, you can eat them too. There's a plethora of plants out there that, the more I work with the more I work with people who are about the land and knowledgeable about our traditional foods. Um, Lisa and Arlo Ironcloud, I've and Summer Freighterhawk. She works a lot with the foods. Sunshine Claymore, I've been able to meet her, like, passing by, but I learned so much from them, like on Facebook, and being able to do, like, we'll come together in groups. We have a gentleman here on Cheyenne River. He works for our Fish and Game,
Oh.
and his name
Mm-hmm.
is Chalmers Kambelic, and he's so knowledgeable about the land and the food systems. Dave West that works at Cultural Center and Dave West Senior, um, and West wife, Michelle West. They have a lot of knowledge. There's so much knowledge out there, but what I would like to see in the future is that we go out and we harvest these foods and we save them up for winter.
Mm-hmm.
We don't over harvest. That's the other thing, is harvest properly and start nourishing our bodies with what we have. Start growing our own foods, because the only way that we can be a sovereign nation, and this isn't just for reservations or the indigenous
Right.
people, this is for people as a whole, for us to be sovereign as humans. And here in the United States of America, um, it's a mindset, and we got to get back to the land and start nourishing the land and knock off the pesticides and stop eating, foods that
Mm-hmm. You
give
know,
you disease.
just a few months ago, we were having conversation through the podcast about rural hunger and the challenges and the additional strains being in a rural community. And when you think about reservation, you've talked about how incredibly spread out and rural it is. It's a similar, situation to your point. Like, this is for everybody, even our small rural communities that are having food insecurity challenges. Going to a food sovereignty mindset is really what's going to help build sustainable solutions. Being able to produce your food for your community, for yourself and your community, is what's going to be able to help you provide for the next generation and the next generation, and keep that community healthy and thriving. So, we hear about food sovereignty more, though, within reservations. And I know Rosebud is doing some really incredible things. We've been working with Sisseton Wahpeton
Yes.
on some things. What types of food sovereignty work is happening within Cheyenne River?
Right now, Cheyenne Eagle Butte, they've really taken the initiative. They have a greenhouse and they went ahead and they purchased hydroponics for the school.
Mm,
Um, a CRST farm to school. We just submitted a grant to get greenhouses and hydroponics within each school. I think the first steps into going towards food sovereignty, the most realistic thing to do is to get it into the school systems and
yeah.
to start teaching the youth how to grow food. And I believe that once we start with our school systems, we'll be able to feed our elderly. We should be able to sustain ourselves once the production starts going, and once
Mm-hmm.
people start catching on. We'll be able to produce enough food for the youth, and as time goes on, I strongly believe that there'll be enough food to get out into the communities, because there's going to be an abundance. We are abundant people. We're so abundant. It's just reminding ourselves of how abundant we are with the
Yeah.
resources that we do have. Um, I know Timberlake School, they are taking action to get the greenhouses in there. The CRST Farm to School has, we just kind of take initiative. It's from our Techa Fund, Tribally Techa Fund, that we wrote the grant for. So hoping, and we got letters of support, and hoping when the money hits, we can, learn as we go, because this is just a learning process too.
Yeah.
Nobody's here has really lived in a food sovereignty and really used food as a
Mm-hmm.
currency, and kind of changing the currency of today to food,
Yeah.
there's so many. And one thing I didn't mention when I introduced myself, first and foremost, I'm an artist, and I've lived a big portion of my life, as long as my hands were busy, my household was taken care of. I'm a beater, and it was that lifestyle was a choice because I am I did have an
Mm-hmm.
education and all of that, but I decided to do that to raise my daughter here at home for a long period of my life. And it has always sustained me and has always, kept this household running, kept us fed. Um, and just having that mindset as a whole, as long as your hands are busy, everything will fall into place. And there were times, I lived through that. I was like, dang, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, or I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I'll be able to pay for that, or where is this going to come from? But, um, instilling a faith and instilling, that just that prayer of Tinkashila, please take care of me, and surrendering in that I've, uh, I've always been taken care of. And, um, and that's for everybody as a whole. A creator will always take care of you no matter what, as long as you got a good intention and don't feed the fear. So, and it's hard, it's a different type of mindset, but it's
Yeah, and I guess I want to try to couple that with, you've talked a lot about the youth and teaching the next generation and all of the resources and the work that are happening to keep your youth engaged. Some of the things that we hear with the work that we do in tribal communities is that not the cultural foods aren't always the most popular foods, right? Like they want convenience foods. They want, kind of that stuff that we've talked about, the chicken
they want
nuggets and
Cheetos.
the,
Yeah, they
yeah, they
want
want
Cheetos and
Cheetos because it tastes
cupcakes.
good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so as you talk about like the food sovereignty and the importance of of transitioning back to the eating the food from the lands and the foods that are right for your body, do you see that as a challenge with your youth? Like, are you concerned about their ability to come along with that need so that the communities can thrive?
I think working with our youth, as long as you introduce it, they're pretty much, you'll always get a group of youth and they'll be like, ew, or I
Yeah.
don't want to do that, like you get a kickback, like, but there'll always be one. And you can always look at them and say, hey, try it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
gonna, you know,
Yeah.
and however their palate responds to that. And one thing, if they're old enough and if I've got somebody face to face, it's like just try it, and you might not like it, but at least you tried it and you always
Mm-hmm.
remember it. Because
Right.
there's a lot of healthy foods that I've eaten in the past that I didn't really like at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But as my body became healthier and I started,
Yes.
transitioning, and it's like we have to detox, and
Mm-hmm.
we've got to detox our parasites that are inside of us. It's a real thing. Um, so, and it's just education. And next year for Head Start, I really want to go in and do like a hands-on class. Head Start has gotten buffalo meat on their menu. The kids love it. As long as, the younger you start them,
Yes.
um, and, make it fun. That's the other
Yeah.
thing. Food should be fun. And, but it's the other one topic I do want to say is like food as a whole is there's this we don't need to eat all day long. Like the human body isn't really made to eat 3 times a day. It's ultimately made to probably eat once a day.
Mm-hmm.
And we can survive without eating and just water to help reset the body. And that's a different rabbit hole, but fasting is important. So,
I
and
suppose if you're eating the right foods, it's, satiates that appetite
yeah,
and you don't a few hours later get hungry. It's not that spike in hunger and blood sugar and all of those things. And I as you say all these things about the younger generation, I'm the mom that, hey, I raised my kids on convenience foods. Like I frozen pizza, all those things. But my youngest, who just is graduating high school, is probably the healthiest eater out of all of us. I mean, she's very intuitive to what she's eating and the sugar content, the carb content. Like she pays really close attention to that stuff. And honestly, I would credit Michelle Obama's initiative when she was the first lady within the school lunch system to reduce, the ketchup and the ranch and those things that can be addictive because of the sugars and the chemicals that are in them, and the education that came with that about the importance of fueling your body with the right foods.
Yep.
Because she didn't get that from home as I'm putting a plate of pasta in front of her.
Yep.
And I think that's a testament to what you said, that the younger that those kids are influenced by the healthy things, the younger they learn, and the more also they're likely to try those things that seem odd to people as they age. So
Yep.
I think that's a really good point. And our next generation, those youth are the next generation, and we need them to be healthy and resourceful in order for things to continue, right?
Yep. For us to, because the human race as a whole, like, especially in America, because there's such a huge diabetes pandemic, and then there's such a mental health pandemic, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these mental health issues that we have are because of the food
Mm-hmm.
that we're eating. They'll even say Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. I've heard that over and over and over again.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the food really attacks. There's certain foods, and then they put metals in our foods. Like it's a time for us to, pay attention. The other thing I always tell people is talk to your food. Before you eat it, talk to your food. And does
Okay,
your
this is
body
a new
want
concept.
yeah, does your body ask your body, and then ask your body, does this nourishment for my body? Is this gonna help, help my body? And you'll get a yes or no. When you get intuitive, because we all have it, when you ask those questions, you'll notice like you won't be hungry for that second. Like I can walk into a convenience store or grocery store, and I have no desire for potato chips. I have no desire for those sweet things or those cookies or anything like that. It
All
doesn't
right, I'm
look,
going to give this a try.
yeah,
I'll report back and let you know how that turns out for me.
yeah, it
I'll try to
just,
work on being in that intuitiveness. And as I age, that all of that makes absolute sense to me, right? Like I really regret all the processed things I've eaten that now I want all the time, and it's
but
harder
yeah, but
as you age.
you didn't know. And the other thing is like food is such a mental health thing, like this obesity. People just, your emotions, like you're eating, your
Mhm.
hands are hungry,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
yeah. So it just taking it back and like to remember to be gentle with yourself and just have that conversation with your body, and then have that conversation with the food in front of you, and learning, what's nourishing you, and learning more about your own body and what it really needs, and if it needs to take a break. Because I'll say again, fasting does, letting the body, the organs rest
Yep.
for a 12-hour period. There's a really big, like 36-hour period really does a lot, to help reset the body. But we're in a society now where, there's somewhere you go into the cities and there's a restaurant wherever
Mhm.
you go,
Mhm.
and they're shoving this food. Well, how? And I'm like, dude, how nutritious is this food? And like, I mean, all these places are staying open and they're generating all this money, but how, us eating from the time we get up to the time we go to bed, how respectful is that to our bodies?
I
Um,
think you make a really good point in that we talk a lot about a challenge of food access in rural areas being not having a grocery store. But
mm,
really, what you're saying is that's not necessarily a solution, putting a grocery store everywhere, putting a restaurant everywhere. The solution is really, you know, getting back to the practice of
land,
the most effective way to eat, And if you have to travel for that purpose, that's okay because your body can sustain you to do that
Yep.
if you're eating mindfully and in the right way. And so
Mm.
this is, I mean, this is a big initiative. When you food sovereignty as a whole is a really big initiative to get started, to to sustain, to transform the mindset that communities have. And it requires still those resources like our community partners and Feeding South Dakota coming in and providing for the now while there's preparation happening for the future. So within reservation community, specifically as you're working toward a food sovereignty initiative, what needs to change within that community to really help this effort launch and become successful so that there's that long-term food access?
I strongly believe it's a mindset, too. One thing that is it's really strong here. I'll go back to the mental health. It's like we're all laterally oppressed, and like being laterally oppressed, you kind of stay in the
Mm-hmm.
past. There's been a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trauma that's happened. So opening up a perspective to people and just being, like, because we have convenience stores. Like we have one on the east end and we have one on the west end, and then we have Dupree has a grocery store, and then Eagle Butte has a grocery store.
Okay.
And Dupree's grocery store is beautiful. They have beautiful produce. They've got everything that you need right there, and so does Eagle Butte. And then, but in these smaller convenience stores, people will the food in there is not very healthy for the body. But just getting people more aware that they can grow their own food. It's really there's I have hope and I've got faith that, like, with these food distributions that the corporation is, we have the opportunity to do, like, they're getting buffalo meat, they're getting grass-fed beef, they're getting
Mm-hmm.
fresh, everything is, minimally processed, it's good food, so they have that opportunity to taste that food for that, or for this time frame, however long, this program lasts. um, but what I'm hoping that'll come out of it is, like, man, you can grow your own food,
Yeah.
and you can grow enough food to sustain yourself from seed to harvest all year round.
Yeah.
And you've got access to this land. You can learn more about your traditional foods, um, you know, drying them, storing them, and taking the initiative to um, go that way. But really, it starts as just getting a different perspective, possibly, because what I see a lot in our people is that um, they they stay laterally oppressed. So they're like, I can't do this and I can't do that, and that's not that's not part of my, they just don't get up
Yeah.
and get out of the house and take the initiative for themselves.
Yeah.
And to me, I have a lot of compassion
Mm-hmm.
um, for that, because they matter too.
Yeah.
And once you start helping yourself, beautiful things follow.
So what I'm hearing is it takes education, so knowledge on the how. It takes funding to provide the resources and the things that are needed, the greenhouses, the water, all the things, right, to build the skills. But really, it takes the right mindset, and it takes helping people get to that mindset, which is something that is hopefully organically happening through these food distributions of these foods that are the right foods at the right time. And so, we need programs like that to continue so that people continue to have that experience and understand that this food is good food and this food is food you could produce yourself, or together as a community we can build this access, and then ultimately as generations continue to access food and grow food in that way, you're rebuilding a healthy community. You're rebuilding, uh, indigenous peoples who can be back to that ultimate state of thriving,
Yep.
and eliminating these challenges of diabetes and hypertension and mental health issues, because you're going back to really culturally what has always been the right thing, which is the land, taking
Yeah.
things from the land.
Yeah.
I,
Moving the
I just
land.
yeah, food sovereignty is one of my favorite things, especially within tribal communities, to talk about, because I think it's just such a beautiful concept. I think it's such a beautiful way to solve an ugly issue.
Yeah.
So it is one of my favorite things to discuss.
It's the land, Unchi Maka will provide everything for you. And we just have to remember that it's part of everybody's DNA. That's why we came here on Earth. And she is here to nourish us. Any problems that we have, she'll take it for us and she'll recycle it back into the earth. It's a it's a communication with the plants. It's a communication with the four-leggeds. It's a communication, and to go back to communicating with our plant relatives, and to go back to communicating with our four-leggeds, and then therefore we have a better communication with ourselves. Because as you know, in today's society, one of the biggest obstacles is communication. And
Mm-hmm.
who's really, like somebody's just going to hear you on their perspective of where they're at. And doing this work, it's like we have the opportunity to plant these seeds. And it's just reminding people that you are connected to the land. We are the land. The land is, we belong to the land. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to it's a harmony there.
Well, I
Um,
think that's a beautiful way to wrap up our conversation, um, because I think it summarizes all of it, right? It just really brings us back to the simplicity of all of this. While it feels complex and while it feels like a lot, and it will take a lot of work, it really is that simple. That
yeah,
we belong to the land; it doesn't
yeah,
belong to us. And
yeah,
I think a lot of producers in our state can identify with that, right? We've got a lot of farmers who have a love for the land that gives so much abundance. So I think you and I could talk for hours,
yes.
honestly, about this. So
Drink a
before we
gallon of
go,
water. So
I know, right? Before we go, I have one question for you that was not in our outline that I always like to kind of toss out there. So if South Dakota were a fruit or a vegetable, what would it be and why? And so I not the category fruit or vegetable, but a type of fruit or vegetable.
it would be a choke cherry. I have mad love for choke cherries, just because the antioxidants in there and all the healing properties. Um, and the that's one of our traditional foods that has sustained us for, mixing choke cherries with buffalo is my jam. I love how my body feels after I drink choke cherry juice. I love what choke cherry brings, and one of the things that I work on really hard is just having a communication with my food and with these plants as they're living and as I'm digesting them and how they nourish my body. Um, so yeah, South Dakota is it's just a big old cherry.
That is the first time I've had choke cherry, and I think you did a great job assimilating that. So thank you very much, and thanks for being with us today. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody who tuned in today to hear this great conversation with Irona and learning more about tribal food sovereignty and how that actually is a great solution for communities across the state. But I hope your takeaway was really the opportunity to learn more, to learn more about work that's happening across our state to fight hunger, as well as to learn more about how best to nourish your body, how you can really take some of the things that Irona has shared with us and apply them to your own life in a way that helps you thrive and helps you have all the nourishment that you need to be healthy. Thanks again for joining us today.